Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Neurodivergent Soul. With me in my Zoom room is Ayla Willow. And Ayla is a colleague of mine. We work together with the Power of 13 and all sorts of other collaborations on this body of work. And we were chatting the other day, and Ayla said, I would love to hear the origin story again of how you created Middle Earth Medicine and where all this yummy work comes from. And so I promised her I would share that story again. We would share it with you, our podcast listeners, and and show some of the imagery that is connected to it. This is a very creative process. So some of the images speak a lot more than I can share with words. But I'm delighted you're here, Ayla. Really, really lovely to be connecting with you again on this journey that we're interweaving all sorts of lovely things with continuously. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. And I'm really glad that we're doing this because it often comes up for me that I want to hear that origin story again. And having been with you for 8 years now, just seeing that change and evolution, but always wanting to go back to how did it all begin? And that's a very big part of this work, isn't it? So
It
it's
is.
what we focus on in the work, and so I just really yearn to have that story and for others to hear it too. One of my favorite bits of your workshops was when you were sharing more on that story. So very excited to just hear it, listen and see where it goes and share it with others.
Great. Yeah, well, I can do that. I think if I was to start sharing the story, I would, fully, I would have to go right back to my conception and birth, which I'm not going to do in this because I share a lot about that at other times. And of course, it's in my book. But I think to get a sense of this work and why it exists for me, I have to include a little bit of that past, because as a little girl, I had my special interest, which others here will relate to, was definitely the soul journey, particularly in myself, in my animals. I wanted to know what the soul was. I could relate to something spiritual throughout my life, even though I wasn't particularly religious myself. My family was. But I had this absolute fascination for what is the soul, and also asking the question, why am I here? So why am I here, and why are we all here? What are we here for? And so that led me into a whole journey of deep inquiry, even when I was very, very young. And I love to dance. So whenever I was dancing, I always felt like I was connecting to some kind of life force, like something that for me represented God or spirit or the life force, something much, much bigger than myself. And when I would dance, I would feel that kind of a real sense of wholeness, a sense of peace, a sense of just love in a way. And it took away all the stresses and difficulties that I had in my life. Being neurodivergent, I could get easily dysregulated and the like. And so that's what helped me. And it was a kind of like stimming in a way, what we talk about, this need for repetition. And I loved repetition. So I was playing the same little records over and over again. So the same songs, the same music, the same kind of movements, that were really helping me with that regulation, but also that connection to the spirit world. And so as time went on, I was dancing in youth clubs. I was dancing in my bedroom, closing the curtains, put my records on. I didn't go to things like nightclubs or anything like that because I became a mother very early on. And so the only chances I really got to dance were in my living room once the kiddies had gone to bed. And then, I would find that kind of freedom. But I kept asking that question, why am I here? And in the dance, I would ask that question. And I felt now and again, I got some kind of answer for that moment, for that particular piece of time that I was living. And it would grow and change and expand. And to the point where I became a 5 rhythms dance teacher once the children were a bit older. And I started to share dance spaces. still dancing for myself, still going to workshops. I wanted the conscious dance. I wanted those intimate spaces. I wanted to be in a crowd of people with the dance, but not necessarily communicating so much. It was just like we were all in it together. We were holding that space together, and there was a deep, deep intention for the dance. And then that led to my creativity, my writing. I found that if I danced and I wrote and I created, then that would really help me to start to explore further about who I was and what my purpose was in life. So there are so many stories around that. And so where this work actually started to develop itself was a journey I took to work with a particular teacher, which was Bill Plotkin, who came over to the UK. And we went to a lovely, lovely, beautiful place in the north of Wales called Caernarfon. And it was there that I met Bill and his lovely wife and a wonderful group of fellow explorers. And we were in the depths of this incredible countryside with these beautiful little hobbit type houses, very ancient woods, and a big lake, and the most wonderful, wonderful river with waterfalls. And yeah, it was stunning. I'd left my family behind, having newly moved back to the UK from Ireland, and we'd been house hunting and looking for where we wanted to settle. And my husband was looking after the children, who were actually teenagers at this point. They were young children. And I went off to do this workshop. I was going to be away for 4 or 5 days, I think. And I settled myself in. And before we went into the deep, intimate work and began, I made a call home to see how my daughters were, the youngest daughters particularly. And I got met with a very grumpy voice saying, my boyfriend's just dumped me. And that was really hard to hear. Here I was in a miles and miles away, 5-6 hour drive away, and my daughter was going through a very difficult time. And I didn't know quite what to do. So I asked her, do you want me to come home? She said, no, definitely not. And she apparently was just going to shut herself in her bedroom, and that was it. She was 15. Her boyfriend had dumped her with a text message. Ouch, worst possible thing. So I was really feeling the agony of this world of needing to be with my daughter and needing to do the work that I so longed to do, that I felt somewhere this was going to be really important for me. So I immersed myself into the work, giving the old call home to just check on things, but things seemed to be settling and seemed to be okay. And during that time, we were asked to create from this piece of clay an object and just allow it to inform us, allow it to start to appear, whatever it was meant to be. And this would be part of our intention for the time we spent there. Well, as I started to create, I couldn't quite get the hang of it. I created a circle and it fell apart. And I just kept doing, but in the end, I had this little shape. It was a bit like a little shape that would sit in there. And it was like a little boat, like a little clay boat. And I thought, okay, I'm going on a journey. I'm going across the waves. I'm on an adventure. Great. And he said, go out to the woods and take it with you and, pray or do whatever it is you meditate, whatever it is you do to set that intention. So I went off and sat on a rock in the middle of the river. I said, okay, I'm on a journey. Show me what's mine to do here. And I put my little boat down in the water, ready for it to sail off into the distance. But of course, being clay, it just plopped to the bottom of the water. Down, down, down it went amongst all the stones. And I thought in that moment, okay, I'm going through a very, very deep journey here. And that evening, I dreamt in my little cabin, and I had this dream about a little house in the woods where we were. And I went into this little house, and it had 2 fireplaces, one on either side of a wall, which I thought was very odd. And as I looked in the dream, I started to get a lot of awareness around what this might be, where they're used, were there flames in there, was there heat from it? But no, they just seemed very still, dull, nothing there at all, cobwebs, old rubble. And I went back from that place and woke up that morning listening to the river flowing beside me. And then the next morning we were asked by Bill to go back into the woods and to take a look and see, what we could find, what was calling us, what was alluring us to be in nature with. And I went there. I wanted to sit by the river with my drum and this beautiful river and sing my songs and meditate. And I thought, yeah, this is the perfect spot for me. But it wasn't to be, because I couldn't get comfortable there. And he said, what place allures you? What place is calling to you? Not just where would you like to be, but what is calling to you? And it was a very, very strong pull. And so I got up and I said, okay, where am I supposed to be? And I saw this little broken down house out in the woods. And I was like, you're calling me. You are most definitely calling me. And I decided that that's where I had to be. And I went running through the thicket, running through the undergrowth to get to this little place. And there it was, this little broken down house. The roof had gone, the walls had gone, the doors and windows had gone. And I walked through the opening that would have been a door, and I went in, and there was another wall in between. It was in two parts, and there was a tree growing up in the middle of it. And I went through the little gap, little broken down gap in the wall into this other little room. And what did I see there? But two fireplaces. Yeah. Empty of flames, cold, forgotten. And I went in there and I stood there, and I was like, my heart was beating. This was the dream I'd just had. And there were other things to it, but I won't go into too much detail with that. But I looked at these fireplaces and I started to play my drum and felt everything that I felt. And eventually I took out two little candles, little night lights, and I put one in each fireplace. And I stood with my back to that wall, and I could see the little flickering flames either side of me. And as I felt that space within me, I started to think about my daughter, who was going through this difficult time, and the fact that, I had these two choices in my life. One was being with my family, being a mother, being a good mama, supporting my family. Yeah. The other one was the soul work that I felt I was here to do in the world. And I recognized this pull, this incredible pull between the two, such a huge pull. It was agonizing almost. And I went out from that place and I went into the community, and we danced together, and I found myself in this circle dancing and feeling everything that I felt about the tension, not just between my daughter, my family, and the work that I felt I was here to do, but I felt all the tension between all the opposites, all the polarities that I ever felt in my life. And there were so many of them. I could recognize them right from the very beginning of my conception, when I was conceived, the date I was born on, everything that I met throughout my life, there was a very strong polarity with. And I started to collect all that information and started to create what is now called the magic of mandala, because what I realized was that little boat that I had made out of the clay and that we'd been invited to set our intention for was actually the same shape as a mandala, which is an almond. It's called the mandala because that shape is the shape of an almond, and almond in Italian is mandala. Yeah, also known as the Vesicus Piscis, which is a very intricate piece of geometry that is used to explore polarity and is part of the flower of life that we often see the diagrams of. Well, this was so interesting for me, so incredibly meaningful to me, because I felt I had found the story of my birth, the story of my life journey within that small icon, that small image. And I studied it and I studied it, and I got to know it very, very deeply. And what then happened was I started to offer work around it. I started to develop what's called the magic of mandala. And I kept asking, what's mine to do? How is it for me to bring this work more fully into the world? I needed more from it. It wasn't enough that it was just that. And so that question was always there, and I knew that I needed to progress with a lot of this information. And gradually, over time, as I was offering this work, it was beginning to inform me about my purpose and more of the cartography, which is map making of the soul's journey, and how I could use this as part of it. This was just the foundations. This was part of it, but something was going to grow from that. And I went to South Africa. I'd been teaching there for quite some time. I was holding an ongoing group, which is a course throughout a period of time. And part of that course was a vision quest. And I was sitting by the fire with my drum as others sat in nature and explored their own journeys. And as I sat there, I went into quite a deep meditation, quite a deep trance state. And as I often did. And gradually I started to feel this energy. It was like a download of information. And I started to see bones, skull and bones, and words, the mandala, these beautiful circles that create the mandala. And I started to see polarity in many shapes and forms. And I saw the connection it had to the spirit world and to the world of matter, to earth. And this was fascinating. As soon as I'd completed that task, I went in, I got paper and pens out, as we did with the whole group, and I started to draw, and I started to create. And I was so consumed by this experience. I had to know more about it. And for weeks and months after that, I kept drawing and creating. We started to bring it more into the shape of a wheel because I felt it was more accessible for people. And I decided that oracle cards would be created from this experience, and I would start to involve more archetypes that I'd been working with and other aspects of the work that I did. And so within every element that is there, there is some part of the work I was either offering or what I was creating from that work. So, and I think you actually found the original wheel that was created. So perhaps you could share that, because that's what sparked off you wanting to know my story.
Yeah, I went and had a look and just thought, wow, there's like the history with all the different maps, because this one is so different to what we have now. But seeing that original, but knowing that I have heard that story of how it came to you. And we talked about this more like it was you received it in this kind of direction, and then as you've worked with it, it's become kind of a circular wheel.
Yeah.
No, I just love the whole journey. So yeah, if you wanted to speak to this a bit more.
Yeah, well, that was how it. I was sort of mapping it out when I very first started. Like, how do I map this out? How do I really get a sense of what this means? And are there segments to it, like a wheel that we often see in various models of work and diagrams? It felt more accessible. But also, these were like you can see, there's the dreamer, the innocent, the rebel, the apprentice, the thespian, artisan, the king or queen, the fool, the wise elder. These are all the archetypes that I found myself engrossed in and wanting to understand how we hold those as part of our creative journey. But I knew there was still more to it. This was too basic for me. But what did start to happen was that we started to create the oracle cards from this in particular. But I can see things in it now where I look and I can see the king and queen, we worded as sovereignty. Then it became sovereignty. The rebel we call the spirit rebel. So it's not the stereotype rebel, but it's the spirit rebel, the truth seeker. There were so many things in it that needed to shift and change. And it's a shapeshifter in itself. You know, it's not set in stone. Things are always changing with it. Yeah.
which I've, had the pleasure of being part of for the last 8 years, and the evolution more recently into the Power of 13, but also your growth with understanding yourself, and this the neurodivergent soul bit emerging too from it. It's constantly offering, isn't it, back.
Well, that's it. Yes, and it was this work really that was my special interest, that was the thing that I was so passionate about and so focused on all the time, that it just took so much of my time, my energy, my understanding, my researching, to get to know this more fully. And every journey I ever took was involved with, how did I bring all this together? And that, those first moments of understanding the mandala and that polarity that I was holding, these two circles that overlap, that create this shape. And my parenting, my soul work, they are one thing. I created one thing from that, and holding that as medicine that I have understood throughout my life and found the knowledge of, like how those meet, and then being able to present what I need to present to others, to my communities. I can share what it's developed into, the actual wheel that was created from that. Let's see if we can share that. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
That's on my website. And that is the image that has been created from the one that you shared, Ayla. And how that's,
and this was the one I met with when I first came to your work.
That's right, yes. And even since then there's been some changes. We now have 13 female archetypes that we're working with specifically, and so I'm gradually starting to create the cards to go with that, but the majority of this is how we work today. With we have here outer realms, and we have overseers, we have the dwelling places, we have the stages of life, we have the archetypes, we have the resources, and we have the tools. And right at the center, as you can see there, is the seer, which is represented by the mandala, that central place of our story, right at the very center there. And you can see the almond shape, which is at the very, very core of all the work that we offer.
And interesting, because when you share that origin story, that it was at the very beginning, and so in that way at the core of that, this work coming through you.
And it's how it's expanded outwards, very much so. And then there has been a follow-up, one that's a bit more accessible again, I think, for others. So this is how it is for those who want a simplified version of it, so that we can see a bit more clearly how we might work with our creative journey. And it for me, this is all about the soul's journey and bringing our gifts into the world. So what is our particular mission? What is it that we've identified as something that we want to share with our communities? And why answering that question, why am I here? And so we take people on these journeys to explore these different elements, but they all have much deeper meanings than what we might consider here. So anything that I ever do, anything that I ever create, I use this map to help me identify why I feel it's something that is important to do. The understanding of it from an innocent level, recognizing that my wounds and the things that have held me back in life, or the difficulties, will ultimately affect each of my creative projects, and unless I really turn the actions around into something different, get new perspectives on it. Finding that creative expression rather than limiting myself with any kind of victim story. Helping me to develop my craft, my understanding of it. I work with the thespian's dilemma of how to share our story, our offering with the world, how to get it out there and not shrink from responsibility or earning money, creating a good living for ourselves, and really owning our gift. The sovereign self knows and feels joy when we share our gifts, when we really know that we're here to offer this particular work. And it usually comes through our story, by apprenticing to our life story and owning it. And then embracing humility and learning from our failures, and not taking ourselves too seriously, but taking our offering seriously, because that has come through spirit or whatever it is that we want to believe in, as a life force, something bigger than our own egos. We do not ultimately know why we're here. We get that information from the bigger picture, from what's around us, from where we're directed to, and then ultimately leaving a legacy for the children, whether that's our own children, our grandchildren, or those who come in future generations. Why am I, what is it I'm doing this for, if not for the future generations? Yeah. So those are the images. There is another lovely, very beautiful image that came from the cards, because it was my mother-in-law, who has sadly passed away now, but in her 80s she started to paint these beautiful images for the oracle cards, and then from that I created this map here, to show the creative elements of that and how they will merge together, which has been a really beautiful experience. And again, you see the mandala at the very center of it all.
Yeah, it's beautiful to hear. And it's hearing it again, because when you hear stories again, there's new salient pieces that come always, which is why hearing and telling stories over and over is so wonderful. And it's hearing that personal drive in your story and what you needed to know for you, but there was always underpinning that it was also to bring to the world. And so then how I've experienced this work is, because I've also come alongside to facilitate it, there's that piece of my story that's I'm here for this bit of the journey to support Middle Earth medicine to be in the world, but it's also helped me get to what I'm here to offer. So anyone who comes to this work works their personal story with a view of what am I here to give. And I hear that in your share more today than ever, that yes, there was a personal journey. Yes, I went on that magical adventure to Kaima Bon, and I went deep into my journey, but then in there was something so big to bring through and give to the world. And that feels so deeply important. And I know that because of how it feels to acknowledge that in my body. I feel like this is what people deeply yearn for, whether they know it or not, is to really know, who am I and why am I here? Absolutely. And what am I here to bring?
Absolutely. And I think we can't fully offer our gifts until we know who we are, because it's all tied into who we are. So we can do numerous amounts of trainings and taking part in other people's work and all sorts of things like that, which is great, which is part of the journey. I certainly did that. But ultimately it's who we are that and apprenticing, as I said, to our life story that really informs us about our gifts. And it's that deep journey into self, which we see plenty of people leading all sorts of things who haven't done that level of work, really done that level of work. There's no freedom in life without doing that kind of work on ourselves. And I'm not talking about, the sort of deepest, darkest therapy. I'm talking about understanding your story. And therapy is important, of course, for a lot of, the deeper wounds, but it's not the ultimate. It's usually about changing our perspectives about what we've been through. And if I've found solutions and a deeper understanding of some of my own wounds and found the medicine for that, then it's my duty, I feel, to then share that with others, not to wallow in the the self-pity or the victim story, but to go, okay, I find solutions for this. I find what brings me more joy despite this. And now I know what's mine to share with others on the path.
And that's, from what I understand, also through creativity, which I think sometimes equally very grateful for therapy that I had over the years, until I created with what was there, like that idea of turn your suffering into art. It there was somewhere I got to that I wasn't going more outward into the world, and that was really key for me, was to and to reach that place. I've done lots of deep understanding, but can I make something here? And I mean, you'll know because you know me from my story. For me, it was songs and writing songs and singing and teaching myself the guitar at the most challenging point of my life, where I had done so much work and therapy to unravel stories, but it was like something in me knew, now I have to create with this. And it felt honestly like a matter of life or death, that I needed to create with it. And I know that from finding this work is like, that's where the profound work is. It's like in that creation, because it's quite easy to get stuck, isn't it? Quite easy to get stuck.
Oh, we hear that expression a lot, people feeling stuck
Yeah.
in something. I don't think there's any stuckness. I don't think it's really about being stuck. It's just about pressing the pause button. It's just about waiting for the next part of the journey to unfold. And it's being awake enough to be able to notice what's calling us. And I think that's very, very key. It's okay, sometimes nothing much is happening. But if I keep my eyes open and my senses open, life will show me what's next. I just have to be willing to see and to look and to listen and to feel, in order to grasp those moments that are offered to me. Yeah. And sometimes, when we talk about offering, it's not that it has to be something huge, or, it could be anything, whether it's one-to-one with another person, whether it's group work, whether it's a particular job that we always wanted to do ever since we were a little child. It could be your connection to nature. It could be something to do with the animal kingdom, or bird life. We're not saying everybody should become facilitators or
no, or like some huge, like you said, offering. And that always helped me as well. And you often would talk about, it could be about qualities and thinking of how different we show up in the world with everyone and anyone when we know our story and we've worked through our story. Even just being in the world is a completely different offering. It doesn't, like you said, I've been grateful that this work has, how to say it, just opened up all possibilities and guided me through the steps of courage to break through those limitations that we often have, like I can't, I'm not good enough, or all those stories that we also work with. But everyone trusts what is theirs to bring when they meet with this work, and that's the beauty of it, and the beauty of that circular spiraling sense of the maps that it developed into, that we are all part of this whole. And of course no one's here to be who somebody else is, and it's like we're all here to be parts of that whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately it's about showing up as the beautiful light that you are. Whatever it is that you're here to bring, it's your inner self, it's your wholeness, it's your completeness, it's your awakened self, it's you arriving in your body and being fully present. And that's what we're looking for. That's what this work is ultimately about, is about shining your own light, not necessarily about what you do. It really is about, who am I in the world, and what is important about my presence here. And how we excavate that and bring it out is true healing. Become whole.
Yep, and instantly takes me to, and I was go straight to the innocence and the innocent, but also the way of thinking of inner sense, like that, who we arrived as, but like you always speak to, gets buried under so much, and then we're literally just, okay, you're there, and I'm almost like clearing the way for you to know that you are welcome, because so many stories that we carry were that wasn't welcome.
Absolutely.
And working together with other people in this way with this work is almost like that welcoming over and over again, until we remember we can be welcomed with that light, we can be welcomed with that innocence and inner sense of who we are, and the beauty of that, how hard that can be for people to acknowledge because of those old stories. And that's because of other people's stories and other people's stories, right? So it's really beautiful, essential work right now, I'd say, for these times particularly. Mm.
Yes, I think so. Particularly now. Now is the time.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need more of that.
Wonderful.
Thank you. I just so love hearing the story, and possibly this is the kind of longest stretch to hear the whole thing, because so much you weave it so beautifully, but into the different days on like a retreat or something. So it feels like a real treat to have had the story in its wholeness almost, even though I know there's lots of other threads that I look forward to hearing at other times and other little stories. But yeah, I really appreciate you sharing today that
Thank
story of
you.
origin. Thank you.
Well, thank you for asking me, Ayla. It's always a treat. You know, I call myself a storyteller these days, because I think storytelling is, you know, we're creating the myths of our own journeys for future generations, and those are the, you know, like we hear myths from ancient times. We need to create the myths for the future now, so that those stories can be told, and we have something meaningful to share with others as time moves on. So we need to create those healthy myths that are going to teach the grandchildren of the future.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank
It's been
you.
great. It's been lovely. And I just hope that people will gain something from this, and you know, want to hear more about the journeys that we all have and the stories that we all share with each other. And there'll certainly be a lot more on this podcast and on this particular show, on the audio podcast and this YouTube one too.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.